So they got a mask mandate here in Amherst, Nova Scotia, but I'm saying screw that. I'm going in anyway. What? No, I don't want anything. I think I'll pick up like maybe some more hot pepperoni here. Yeah. Well, I mean, I hardly ever come here, so I figure I might as well pick up some pepperoni. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Who end up just, yeah. I like the TNT. I like the TNT pepperoni, so. What?
Where are you going?
Going to pay for it, I guess.
Okay, I was gonna say I want to pay for it before it gets cold.
Yeah, yeah. No, let's go. Busy in here today, busier than it was yesterday.
Never ending job.
Oh yeah.
Depends on the day. Some days it's not so bad.
There. Made it in and out with no problem. Say no to mask mandates. Hello everyone. Today's date is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020, and I am in the town of Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, Canada. July 31st was a very interesting day in the province of Nova Scotia, as it marked the first day that citizens of this fine province have been mandated to wear a mask in all public spaces because of the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, as it is called by the World Health Organization. This illness has been ongoing since the beginning of this year, but directly affecting our lives here in the province since about March. The mask mandate is supposed to help stop the spread of COVID-19, but I have serious issues with that claim and issues with forcing people to wear a mask to buy and sell or to enter public buildings. I am going to quickly lay out the 3 reasons why I believe both in the province of Nova Scotia and in general this mask mandate is wrong. First, I want to talk about the science. Do the mask mandates actually protect people from giving others COVID-19? I am not a professional in any way, so although my research has led me to certain conclusions, I am going to leave this to the professionals. I was speaking with Graham, a man here in Nova Scotia, who has a background in microbiology, epidemiology, also a senior chief biomedical scientist at the UK Health Protection Agency for many years in the Division of Hospital and Respiratory Pathogens. He stated, "So obviously with my background, I have been following the outbreak with close interest. My bugbear with masks is the lack of science or common sense. I found a South Korea study that showed virus penetration of surgical masks. The South Koreans are not backward in their science, but their report was quickly refuted and they withdrew it. The Vietnam study showed cloth masks did not prevent influenza. All the reports refer to surgical masks stopping 0.3 micron aerosols, but COVID-19 is 0.14 microns. The World Health Organization have recently stated that aerosols are a means of spread. These are different from larger droplets that masks can handle. Pore size of cloth masks is 500 to 1,000 microns. They also mention air conditioning as a factor, but we see no action in that respect. We see medications for diabetes, heart and kidney disease, increasing the ACE2 virus binding sites, but we see no action in that. We see that cats and dogs can be affected, but we see no action in that. All we see is action in an ill-fitting cloth mask that created a false sense of security when even the 3M manufacturers say cloth masks are not to be used for aerosols. The BMJ and others advise using the precautionary principle and anecdotal evidence, yet they ignore the studies available. I have written to Dr. Strang with no response. In my opinion, this is all about votes, so that when the fall COVID season arrives and cases rise, they can't be accused of not trying and losing votes. That was Graham here in Nova Scotia. So we see here that non-medical masks are no use at all, and that people are wearing them just for obedience. And even when it comes to the surgical masks, which may have a function in a hospital where doctors should not be sick and take other precautions, those would have little to no effect in an area with many sick, where some of the virus is still getting out. A study titled "A Cluster Randomized Trial of Cloth Masks Compared with Medical Masks in Healthcare Workers" published on April 22, 2015 from the National Center of Biotechnology Information by members of the Facility of Medicine and the National Institute of Hygiene and Epidemiology was conducted where 3 hospitals were used. One hospital only used cloth masks, one only used surgical masks, and the other was just a regular ran hospital. The attack rate of a virus in these 3 situations were cloth masks at 5.4%, being used as much as they should 56% of the time. The control, where both masks were used, but only 23.6% to the level they should, saw a 4.0 attack rate, and the surgical masks used the same amount as the cloth masks, which was 56%, saw a 3.3 attack rate. The conclusion was penetration of cloth masks by particles was almost 97%, and the medical masks 44%. This study is the first RCT of cloth masks, and the results caution against the use of cloth masks. It needs to be taken into account when you're talking about this study, though, that although this and another study showed surgical masks to be about 40 to 45% ineffective, that this is in a surgical setting where doctors should not be sick and should be using the best hygiene. In a large area where you may come in contact with many sick, each person you come in contact with has 44% of their virus still leaving their mask, which means you get around a few sick people and get their smaller particles of COVID that still leave their body. There is still a very good chance that you're going to get sick despite the mask. One person in the surgical setting, it is greatly useful to them because the amount of virus that is getting out from one person is going to be very small, and they shouldn't even have the virus, like I said. But in a social setting where it's just going to make people feel like they don't have to social distance, and therefore the sickness is going to get out. It's a false sense of security. Okay, so we see that there is at least conflicting science to what we hear from the CDC and the World Health Organization on the masks and the idea that the N95 masks actually protecting against 95% of a virus. We see that there's conflicting science on that. That might not be true. But what if the masks do work? It is my conclusion that even if the masks were successful in keeping the virus at bay, we are not in a situation here in Nova Scotia where mask mandates make any sense. We in Nova Scotia have had sadly 64 deaths in total, and most of those have been in the nursing home in Halifax. This number is still smaller than the amount of flu deaths seen from the flu in 2019 because of an atypical strain of the flu. Sadly, Nova Scotia saw that year 66 deaths. But was there any talks of masks then? Also, as of today, there is only 4 active cases, and there was none at the beginning of the mandate. Now, the argument is that they are going to use the masks as a way of opening up the rest of the country. But let's look at the rest of the country. In Canada, the cases of COVID-19 have been on the decline. We haven't seen a number in the thousands per day since May 25th, over a month before Toronto's mandates. And the most recent number is as little as 314 daily cases in the entire country. Now, you might say this is because of mask mandates in the country, but as I said, the COVID numbers have been going down countrywide long before most, if any, mandates were put in place. To be fair, it does seem as though Toronto's mask mandates line up with the drop in numbers, but in the province of Quebec, where the mandate for masks took place far later, we see the same decline. If we open up, we will have more cases of COVID-19 at first, absolutely. But COVID-19 has been on the decline, not just in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, but countrywide, with or without masks. The crest was supposed to be in late April and early May, and that is exactly what we are seeing, a decline since then. The final case I want to make is that this mandate is tyrannical. A man who was accosted in Ireland for not wearing a mask, even though he had a disability where he shouldn't wear a mask and actually had to fight it in court, spoke out and he said, "The mask is a way of hiding the very humanity of the person, looking at each other not as human beings, but as a mess of bacteria and viruses, which is a danger to my health." He explains in the same video that the mask is a visual representation of the terror that has been instilled with people through COVID-19. Fear has always been a way to control the masses. We can see the incremental increase of control used through this COVID crisis. First, it was a shutdown, except for businesses deemed essential by the government, and they closed the border. And now, it's just like torture. Don't you want your business to reopen? Don't you want to be able to travel? Just wear the mask. Just tell us everything we want to know at the border and register to cross the border in your own country. And soon it's going to be just take our untested vaccine. I hear a lot of people comparing wearing a mask to a seatbelt, but it's no comparison. If you're in a car without a seatbelt, it doesn't matter what the situation is. You are more of a danger to yourself and others. It doesn't take an accident for you to, if you're in the passenger side, you could hit the driver. Or if you're the driver, you could lose control because of a sharp turn. The mask is completely different. If you are not sick, you present zero threat to anyone around you, mask or no mask. Someone who doesn't have COVID-19 is not going to spread it, even if you coughed right on someone's face, which I definitely don't recommend you do at this time, or ever. My point to this is that we are being presumed sick. The only law I can think to compare this to is the gun laws, but even then, a law-abiding gun owner can make a mistake and hurt someone. The only real comparison then that would make sense, but is something that we don't do, is basically if somebody was driving with a bunch of heroin, well, there's no way of knowing. If they're driving the speed limit and following all the other laws, there's really no way for cops to know that somebody's driving to Halifax with drugs to sell them to kids. So we might as well just pull over every car and see if they have heroin. The government is not merely saying we need you to wear masks for a time while we are trying to figure this out. No, they are saying this is the new normal and we need to get used to bringing a mask with us. And why would this be any different? Why would it be any different? Because COVID is barely an issue now in Nova Scotia and all throughout Canada. I won't get into it in this video, but there's a greater plan here. This is one part of greater reliance on the government control, lack of freedoms, and an ending of individuality. All for the greater good. But mask mandates, like much of what the government says is best for us, is built on lies. Say no to mask mandates.